Gdańsk, Poland, 1975. A port city on the Baltic Sea. Cold most of the year. Gray skies pressing down on gray buildings. A city of shipyards and workers, and long, flat roads cutting through the Pomeranian countryside. This is communist Poland, the Polish People's Republic. A country where the state controls everything, where the police are called the citizens' militia, where information is tightly managed and panic must be contained. It is not a country built for catching serial killers. Between 1975 and 1983, 8 years, a man attacked 20 women in the fields, roads, and quiet paths around Gdańsk. 9 of them died. 11 survived. He came out of nowhere. He struck fast. He disappeared back into the landscape. The citizens' militia gave him a code name: the Scorpion.
Paweł Tuchlin was born on the 28th of April, 1946, in Góra, a small village in the Pomeranian countryside. He was the 8th of 11 children. His father, Bernard, was an alcoholic farmer with a violent temper. His mother was little better. The house was not a home. It was a place of punishment, hunger, and humiliation. Tuchlin wet the bed as a child, into his teenage years. In communist rural Poland, this was not treated as a medical condition. It was treated as a moral failure. He described it himself in court. Every morning his parents checked the bed. If it was wet, the punishment came immediately. A weave of leather thongs his father called the medicine. The next morning, the same check, the same result, the same medicine. He grew up soaked in shame. The village knew. The children knew. He was called Pida, the village word for someone who smells of urine. He was not invited anywhere, not included in anything. He described standing alone at village gatherings, watching everyone else, and being told to his face that he stank. By the time Paweł Tuchlin became a man, rage had been building inside him for years.
Tuchlin left Góra and fled to Gdańsk as a young man. He got a job as a truck driver. He married, had a son. On the surface, an ordinary working-class life in communist Poland. Under the surface, something was building. He later described to psychiatrists an obsessive inner world, violent fantasies, voyeurism, an inability to control certain impulses. He consumed pornography compulsively in an era and country where it was almost impossible to obtain. His first marriage collapsed. He divorced, remarried a woman named Regina. He held down his job. He paid his taxes. He attended to his daily routine with the discipline of a man who needed routine to function. And then, in 1975, something gave way. He was 29 years old. The first attack happened in the summer. A woman, alone, on a quiet road outside Gdańsk. A hammer. Tuchlin's method was devastatingly simple. He targeted women walking alone, on rural paths, on roads between villages, on the quieter edges of Gdańsk's suburbs. Women returning from work, women walking home from bus stops, women crossing open ground between one place and another. He carried a hammer. He struck from behind, fast, without warning, without conversation. The attacks were over in seconds, which is exactly why survivors had almost nothing useful to describe. There was no approach, no interaction, no moment to register what was happening. Just a blow, and then either darkness or the desperate scramble to survive. He concealed the hammer against his body when moving toward victims, wrapped in cloth, tucked against him. He had worked out how to carry it invisibly. He was a truck driver. He knew the roads. He knew which paths were empty at which times of day. He knew the rhythm of the landscape around Gdańsk better than most investigators who would later try to find him. He struck. He disappeared. He went back to his truck, back to his apartment, back to his wife and his routine. By the late 1970s, the citizens' militia knew they had a serial attacker. The problem was everything else. Communist Poland in the 1970s was not a society that publicly acknowledged serial killers. The state-controlled press did not run stories warning women. The concept of a public safety alert, the kind that might have saved lives, did not fit the narrative of a well-ordered socialist republic. The investigation was kept internal, classified, quiet. The Scorpion Task Force, 11 people, was only formally established in January 1983. By that point, Tuchlin had already been attacking women for 8 years. The investigation had one crucial near miss early on. In November 1979, Tuchlin attacked 18-year-old Irena H. near the Radunia River. During the attack, he dropped his hammer in the water. Police recovered it. The word ZNTK, the Railway Rolling Stock Works, was engraved in the metal. They obtained a list of every employee and tool user at the factory. Tuchlin's name was not on it. Either the store manager had missed him, or Tuchlin had simply stolen the hammer during the 2 weeks he worked there. The hammer that could have ended everything sat in an evidence bag. The Scorpion did not stop. 1980, 1981, 1982. Women attacked on roads outside Gdańsk. Women found in fields. Women who survived with devastating injuries. 11 survivors, 9 dead. The survivors gave descriptions: a stocky man, dark hair, working-class clothing, moving fast, coming from nowhere. But descriptions in an era before DNA, before CCTV, before digital databases, were almost impossible to act on in rural communist Poland. The task force had a profile. They had a code name. They had a growing list of victims. They did not have a suspect. On the 6th of May, 1983, Tuchlin killed, for the last confirmed time, Jolanta K., 19 years old. During routine questioning for the theft, something broke open. Tuchlin began to talk. He confessed to 10 murders and 11 attempted murders. He was detailed. He described locations, victims, sequences of events. He described his motive in the flattest possible terms. I murdered to feel better. That was it. No elaborate explanation, no psychological framework, no performance of remorse. He murdered to feel better. Investigators scrambled to verify everything he was telling them. Location after location checked out. Detail after detail confirmed. The Scorpion, the attacker who had paralyzed the Gdańsk region for 8 years, had been arrested for stealing a pig cooker. And then came the next move. At trial,
Tuchlin retracted everything. He claimed the confessions had been forced, that the police had beaten them out of him. And at sentencing, after being found guilty on 9 counts of murder, he stood in the dock and delivered one of the strangest statements in Polish criminal history. "If I am released, I will search for the murderer to the end of my life."
On the 6th of August, 1985, the regional court in Gdańsk found Paweł Tuchlin guilty. 9 counts of murder, 11 counts of attempted murder. He was sentenced to death. The Supreme Court upheld it. The State Council refused leniency. On the 25th of May, 1987, Paweł Tuchlin was hanged at the detention center on Krakova Street in Gdańsk. He was 41 years old. He was the second to last person ever executed in Poland's history. What happened after his death is one of the stranger postscripts in European criminal history. He was decapitated. His head was preserved in a formalin jar for scientific study. That jar later went missing. It has never been found. He was buried in Gdańsk's Łastowiki Cemetery. According to his defense lawyer, Marek Maj, the gravediggers urinated in the coffin before they closed it.
9 women dead. 11 survivors who carried what happened to them for the rest of their lives. 8 years during which the state chose silence over safety, never warning women publicly about what was hunting them across the Pomeranian countryside. Tuchlin was caught by accident, by a stolen pig cooker, not by the investigation that had his evidence in a bag on a shelf since 1979. If the store manager at the ZNTK factory had written his name on that list, if the state had told women what was happening on those roads, if the task force had been formed in 1975 instead of 1983, how many of the 9 might still have been alive? Poland doesn't like to talk about Paweł Tuchlin. He doesn't fit any comfortable narrative. He's not a monster from another country or another era. He's a truck driver from Gdańsk who went to work every morning and came home every evening. And in between, when the landscape was empty and nobody was watching, he was the scorpion. His head is still missing. Some questions about Paweł Tuchlin remain unanswered.